Hey y'all, it's Amanda and this is my Texas Zone 8 garden, and today we're going to be doing some work on prepping and pruning and fertilizing our roses for the spring. Okay, so we are past Valentine's Day, which is a good kind of time frame for trimming and pruning your roses. And so I want to really just take you all through the process that I'm going through. Roses are new to me, so my approach to teaching you all is going to be a beginner's approach to everything. But we're actually going to start with this rose right here. Is a Queen of Elegance rose that I do not care for very much. And so I am actually going to be giving it to a neighbor. So we're going to start by basically cutting this back, and we're going to bag it for a neighbor and clear out this spot. And this is one of the things I highly suggest instead of throwing plants away. You know, message your neighbors, post it on your Facebook page, see if anybody wants them. But yeah, we're good to go on that. And then now I have room for a future rose. Jeff's going to go ahead and go put this on the front porch, and we are good to go. We'll go. Okay, so it's actually a couple of days later. I wanted you guys to see me letting that rose go. And I talk a lot about survival of the fittest in my garden. But another thing that I try to talk about quite a bit is the fact that if you don't like a plant, don't keep it. Like, don't give up your precious garden space for a plant that doesn't bring you joy. Just doesn't make sense. And that Queen of Elegance, it's not that there was anything wrong with the plant, with that particular rose. It just had like a muddy kind of a muddiness to its bloom color that I didn't necessarily appreciate. And I think it's part of like that vintage vibe, which I typically like vintage vibes, but I just didn't enjoy the color of it. So it just wasn't for me. It was almost, and I know this is gonna for rose aficionados, it almost had too many petals, which I know like that's a big deal. Everybody wants really heavy petal count, but like it was just too much. Too many petals, and I didn't like the color. So it's gone. I had a neighbor pick it up. It's great. She can put it in her garden and we are good to go. Okay, so today what we're going to do, we are going to talk about pruning and fertilizing roses. And we are going to talk about them from a beginner's point of view, because I'm a beginner. And I know I've been growing roses for like 3, 4, 5 years, right around there, but I haven't really taken the time to study, learn, and understand what is needed for roses. I've talked about it in the past. I feel like roses are like this big like question mark for a lot of gardeners. They feel overwhelming. They feel too finicky and like drama queens, and there's just too much information and too many rules. And so my goal is I want to grow roses in my garden, and I want to simplify it for myself, but also for you all. So that's why I'm just going to document my journey about learning how to grow roses in my garden. One of the big steps to having great roses in your garden is pruning and fertilizing. Now, when we are pruning for optimal growth and optimal blooms. That's the literal point of pruning. Here in Texas, we tend to prune between the months of January and March, depending on how warm it is. Most of us kind of aim for around Valentine's Day. I actually feel like I'm a little bit late this year because we've had warmer weather for longer, and a lot of my roses have already started leafing out. Typically, when you're going to prune, you want to prune before it starts leafing out because it allows you to see the shape of the rose bush better. So you're pruning basically when they're dormant during the winter. Now this year for me, a lot of my roses never went dormant. We never had such extreme cold for a prolonged period of time that my roses, like a lot of them, never stopped growing. So that's a little bit difficult, a little bit different, but it is what it is, and that is something that I'm going to have to deal with in my particular zone. So let's talk about why we prune. We prune for better growth, and it rejuvenates the plant, which is super important, and it helps produce bigger, better, and more prolific blooms. Every time you prune a rose, it literally sends a message to the rose to grow some more. So if you have a rose that's been stagnant for years and it's not producing very many blooms, a nice firm prune on it will help rejuvenate that rose and get it going again. Another key reason for pruning is making sure that we have really great air circulation through the plant and sunlight reaching the inside of the plant. I'm sure lots of y'all have heard in the back of your mind or dealt with that roses do deal with disease and pests. And one of their ways to combat that is to make sure that you have really great air circulation and sunlight reaching as many parts of the plant as possible. When pruning, it allows us to control the shape of the plant and the height of the plant, which is really important because, you know, especially for small gardeners like myself, I can't allow plants to just go bonkers and crazy. You know, I want to be able to control the shape and size to fit appropriately in my space since I don't have tons and tons of space. So let's break down pruning into hard pruning and light pruning. So hard versus light regarding pruning. Hard pruning is going to deliver fewer stems, but those stems are going to be bigger, stronger, and they're going to produce bigger, more beautiful, bold blooms. Basically, if you're doing a hard prune, you really are setting the rose up to have more cut flowers for yourself. Now, light pruning is more about focusing on less big, giant, you know, cuttable blooms. You're focusing more on color. So we're leaving more branches out. We're leaving more opportunities for blooms. The blooms will be smaller, but they'll be more prolific. And this, if you're doing light pruning, is a really good way to approach landscape color. So if you have a rose in your flower bed and you really want optimal color for that rose, you're not focused on cut flowers. What you want to do is a light pruning and then allow it to produce as many flowers as possible to add a lot of color to your landscape. Now, my roses, I'm going to be pruning most of them for cut flowers. However, I do have a Oh So Easy rose that I am going to be pruning for landscape color. So we will talk about that when I get to it. But we do need to take care of the America climbing rose, and the Don Juan climbing rose. We do need to take care of the Atlas and Belinda's Dream, and we do need to take care of the Oh So Easy Urban Legend. So let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about supplies I'm going to be using. I have some long gloves that my mother-in-law got me, and these help cover your forearms and protect you from all of the thorns, which is great. I also have a really nice, good pair of pruners. And I've got a container to throw all of my extra debris in. Now, this right here is an Atlas rose, and you can see how green it is. It never went dormant this year at all. So it does make the process a little bit harder when I'm coming in here to prune it back. So the first thing we're going to do when pruning is we're going to look for any dead material, any stems that look dead. And I can tell you that this is a newer rose and I don't see any particular dead stems at this time. Okay, typically any of the dead wood is going to be dry, brittle, brown, scarred. The healthy stems are going to be green, so that's important to remember. The next step we want to do is let's open up the center of the plant, because we want to promote really great air circulation and really good sunlight towards the middle. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to cut out any of these kind of smaller little branches for a moment to kind of take some space and take a look at what's going on in here, so I can just see better. So I feel crazy because this plant is in really good shape. But we're going to do several. So I feel like I'm not having to do a lot of the typical stuff for this plant. Okay, so the center is looking really good. I'm not worried about that. Next, I'm going to remove any weak growth or small thin stems. So we've got one right here. And I think we could go ahead and remove this one as well. So we'll just start with 3 basic stems on here, and this will produce a lot of new growth. So don't feel super stressed if you feel like you're taking off a lot. A lot of roses can even be taken almost to the ground and still be fine. You're going to be okay. Okay, also at this point, I'm going to look for any branches that are like crossing. So I'm actually going to take out this middle branch right there so we have less crossing between the two of those. Any branches that look like they might be rubbing against each other. And then next I'm going to come in and I'm going to probably go ahead and make some hard cuts on this, which is probably going to just be shocking. But I want to rejuvenate a lot of this growth up high. Basically, I'm going to look right here to an area where you see a swollen area and you see a new branch kind of trying to come off. And that's an area that we want to cut above. When you're looking at that, you're going to cut above this growth right here, and you're looking for growth that is growing away from the inside of the plant. You want it pointing away. Remember, we want really great air circulation. So if I had one like right here that's going back towards the inside of the plant, well, that would kind of defeat the purpose of me just spending the time opening it up for air circulation. So this is going to be really harsh to see. I'm going to cut right above that big growth right there. All right, and that'll push new growth. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to cut 45-degree angle above this growth. And I'm going to cut right there, 45-degree angle above that growth. Also make it like a little trim there. All right, so that was a really harsh takedown of this Atlas rose, but I can guarantee you guys, it is really going to help improve the overall quality of this rose. I'm also coming in right now and I am removing any dead debris at the base of my plant right here. And the reason I'm doing that is that's what typically causes any kind of disease around a plant, any kind of dead, dying, decaying debris. So I'm going to go ahead and remove any of that extra debris just like that. And we've got one rose done. Now stick with me because we're going to be doing several roses and they're each going to be different, and I think it's important to watch each one. Okay, this next one right here is Belinda's Dream, which does really great in my particular area. I'm going to bring the camera in a little bit closer so you guys can see better. Okay, so there's a lot more going on with this particular plant right here, okay? Remember, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and remove anything that's dead looking. I'm looking for brown and brittle. You see these right here? Those are brown and brittle dead branches right there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those off. I don't see a lot of dead branches anywhere else, but we'll take kind of a look and see. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the center for better circulation. So I'm going to come into this, remove any canes that I think are kind of like taking up a lot of space. All right, we'll go with that. Next, I want to show you right in here, we want to kind of remove any canes that are crossing or too close to each other. Because especially over here, if you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3. This is brand new soft growth right here. This is older growth. Oh, there's actually even another one over here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stems right here beside one another. I'm going to strip off some of these leaves so you can kind of see these stems a little bit better. So you can see we got a lot of stems going over there. It's too many. So I'm going to take out the middle stem. Whenever you have stems that cross each other, they can actually create almost like a sore on the stem. And whenever you have sore or areas that aren't strong, it's an area for pest and disease to penetrate the stem. So we definitely don't want that. I'm going to remove any thin, weak branches. Like that. Next, I am going to remove what I guess a lot of people call chicken's feet. So when you have branches like this with a lot of little shoots off of it and that type of thing, that's typically what you would leave if you were doing light pruning, right? Because this would produce a bunch of small flowers. I'm not looking for small flowers. Remember, I am cutting for cut flowers. So I'm going to come down here and I've got fresh new growth right there. I'm going to go ahead and take that branch all the way down to its fresh new growth and get rid of that kind of big chicken's foot looking thing. Now over here I've got a stem that has a little bit of dead growth on it. So we're going to go ahead and cut 45-degree angle, and I cut right above some fresh new growth right there. I'm also going to cut right here. Now this is a really good example. I've got growth right here and I've got growth right here. This growth is pointing back towards the inside of the plant. This growth right beside it is pointing away. I want the pointing away, so I'm going to cut above the pointing away growth, just like that. And I know you're like, Amanda, you removed all of that. Yeah, this is not going to do anything for me cut flower wise. This is what I would leave if I was going to do light pruning. So I'm just going to do a little bit more pruning in a few places. All right, and then at this point, this is one of the roses that I had put some mulch on, and I am going to pull away some of the mulch from the crown of the plant, and then that exposes the whole inside of the plant. You can come through and you can cut off any additional dead branches if you want. It's not necessary. However, when you get when you get an older rose with a whole bunch of dead short branches that you cut, like right there, then you end up creating a place for additional debris to go and rot and cause disease. I do have an additional dead branch right here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. This is a little bit longer than I would like, but let's go ahead and leave it as an experiment and see what happens. Okay, right here is my Oh So Easy rose, and you can see its green stems going up. It's even gone as high as up here. This right over here, let me go ahead and trim this back. This is a lantana. Okay, so the Oh So Easy rose, I am going to prune it as a light prune, and it's going to be more for landscape color than cut flowers. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut back a lot of these really tall pieces. I'm not real stressed about which direction these pieces are traveling. Like before, when I was going in and being like, oh, okay, I'm going to cut above this because it's pointing out. Not real stressed about that at this exact moment. I'm more just wanting to get some of these really large, out of control stems out of my way so that I can better see what's going on with the plant. Okay, so I got rid of some of the like really insane, crazy ones. So next what I'm going to do is I'm looking for any dead growth, which I really don't see any going on, which makes sense because this is a newer guy. So, but I am going to bring you in close and show you a few different things. Okay, so I'm having to do this without gloves so I can hold the camera. All right, so I'm going to come down here. Do you guys see this right here? It is a stem coming off, and then it's like breaking this way, and it's kind of craziness. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And look at this crazy stem that's hitting the ground and bringing, look at this, one stem. All right, and that was all kind of touching the ground, and that invites more disease and issues. So I kind of removed that, and now that's opened up a little bit of the bottom. Now we're also going to look here, and you can see we have a stem coming across and crossing this other main branch. So I am going to go ahead and cut out that stem right there. All right, so it's no longer crossing it, which is great. We also have this branch coming up, and it's coming across other stems right here. You can see that this branch is crossing other stems. So I'm just going to go ahead. Actually, I take it back. You see these two stems that are right by each other, this stem and this stem? We don't want both of those. They're going to end up rubbing against each other. I'm going to go ahead and just pick one and cut it. sacrificing for y'all. It's going to hurt. Because I don't have my gloves on because I can't hold my gloves at the same time as the camera and pruning. All right, so remove that. So now we only have that single stem there, which is way better. Let's look around. This guy is coming towards the front. I'm going to go ahead and prune him just because he was definitely going to have some crossing issues. And then to open up the center, I'm going to prune out this guy right here. I think I got to come from back here. All right, I do kind of see some dead and dying down here. Let's take a look at that. See this branch right here? Definitely a dead and dying branch. See how it is forcing itself to go down right there? Let's go ahead and cut that guy out. I guess I have daffodils here. I do not remember planting those there. Got a little spindly guy coming out here. Go ahead and let that go too. Okay. All right, let's put the gloves back on. Okay, at this point, I've kind of cleaned out the center, gotten rid of anything that's dead, anything that's crossing. Now I'm going to just do a general prune on the edges. Now, on the ones that we're pruning for cut flowers, I would have taken this like stem right here that has all this branching, right? And I would have come all the way down here because I'm really looking to just focus on, you know, a single massive stem. But with the way these are, I'm wanting more color. That's the important thing to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come and I'm going to trim off a little bit of all of these ends. That will help produce more branching that will create more color. So we're just going to come through and do some of that. So right here on this, I'm just going to prune just like that to get some new growth going and some new branching for more flowers, more smaller flowers, but more flowers. But these are small anyway, this urban legend. This is a landscape rose. This isn't for cutting anyway, but this just kind of gives you a general idea of what that's all going to look like. All right. All right, I see a few more areas I'm going to want to remove. Just stuff that looks scraggly and not good. All right. And there we go. We've really opened up this rose from where we've started. It still has a lot more canes than what we just did for like Belinda's Dream and the At Last. But this opens it up and will give it a really nice fresh start for this spring. Okay, this right here is an America Climbing Rose, and I recently planted it in the ground, and its goal is to be able to come over and start climbing up on this trellis right here for the shade garden. However, I'm not ready to go ahead and start attaching it to this because I need to stain my my shade garden trellis right now. So there's still time. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a pretty good prune this year to allow some new strong growth that then I can begin training onto the trellis. Eventually I'll remove this trellis right here, and it will just go onto this wood trellis back here. So you can see that this guy kind of went partially dormant and then stopped. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and see if I have any dead branches, which I see one over here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And while I'm down here, I'm going to go ahead and pull back the mulch that's around the crown, just like that, so that the crown can breathe. Got another dead branch right there. That's good. I don't have a lot of dead branches because I did do a little bit of pruning of any dead branches at the beginning of the winter just to prep these. All right, looks good. So right here, I've got 2 branches right here, and they are starting to try to cross. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this guy right here. Don't want them to cross because remember, when they rub against each other, they can create a sore or scar that then opens itself up to pest and disease. So we want each of the branches to have their own personal space. All right, I've got a branch that's trying to head back into the middle here. I'm going to go ahead and clip that. And then I've got a kind of small spindly branch right there that we don't really need. All right, looking good. So I've got some branches over here that are trying to go this way, away from the trellis. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. They were kind of spindly anyway, going the opposite direction, and now I can force it this way. This guy isn't really doing anything, this little spindly guy. We'll just go ahead and remove it. I'm wanting nice, strong stalks to be able to work over into this position. So right now I've got 5 nice, strong stalks. I think I'm going to go ahead and take this down a little bit on the height. I know these are all branching out a little bit, but I want these stalks to be a little bit longer and stronger. So this is going to look harsh. This one has a lot of smaller growth off of it. Remember, that's not what I'm wanting quite yet. I'm wanting these long stems that I can get over here to the trellis. So this is going to be harsh too. And now this is about me training my climbing rose, all right? This is not about going for optimal blooms right now. This is about me training it in a way where I can start sending it in the direction that I need. Let me give you guys a close-up of this. Okay, I want to show you guys in here. Do you see this guy right here? That is new growth coming up. That's kind of a swollen area that's coming up. See that right there? That's a scar. That's where something is rubbed against and weakened the outside of that stem. And if that were to continue, that's where we would have disease and pests coming in. So what I'm going to do is, this stem is pointing to the right towards the new shade garden trellis, and we have a scar. So it makes sense that, well, I want the growth to go that direction, right? And I don't want the scar, so I'm going to make a cut right above it. I'm going to come in here at about a 45-degree angle. Just like that. I know that seems super harsh, y'all. But I'll have y'all follow along with this as I'm continuing to work on these roses so that you can see how it grows over the season. Once this gets a lot of its new growth on it, we'll begin training it up over here. And I believe the America, I think it's 12 feet tall. Let me look real quick at the tag. Yeah, it's 10 to 12 feet tall. So if we come back here and look, from here to here is about 6 to 7. So we should be able to reach about the middle when it's at its full growth, which works well because I'd like to put an additional climbing vine, have a honeysuckle that wants to come up from this side, which I think will be really, really good. So yeah, harsh, but I think it'll work out well. Okay, I'm sweating. Okay, the last one we're going to be trimming today is the Don Juan climbing rose right here. Now last year I trained it to just 4 main stems to come up and onto the trellis. Since then I've learned a couple of things. For a climbing rose, you don't want all your stems to go straight up, right? We want them to actually go horizontally, and then it will shoot new growth off of there, which will be great. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in and cut off, this is going to look insane, I'm going to cut off all of the ties that I have that are holding this in place, because we are going to resituate it for optimum blooms. Now you can certainly cut Don Juan for cut flowers. My goal is really more lots of flowers for it, just to enjoy. Now, if I were to take the ties down this whole plant, which is, I'm just doing half at a time, And I am going to have to work without gloves because I need to tie. I need to tie the twine. So this is just a big thing of like jute twine. It works really well. It lasts quite a while. I typically get mine at the dollar store, and it works good. So we've got this big cane going right here. What I want to do is I want to lower this a little bit, have it going a little bit more horizontally, and then same thing with this cane. I'm going to lower it a little bit and have it going a little bit more horizontally as well. Now I'm not wanting to like overly bend it because you can cause breakage. I might actually tie this big one in 2 places. And you can see that this is taking a little bit more of a horizontal, and then all of these will grow upwards towards the sun, which will work really, really good. Okay, and right here I've got 2 canes crossing. So you can see this cane is coming across this cane. So what I'm going to do, cut those loose, have them trade places. Actually, I think what I'm going to do, instead of trading places, instead of keeping all this, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to cut. Let me give you all a close-up before I cut. Okay, so here's this branch coming across and it's crossing the other branch right there. We don't want that because remember that causes scars and causes problems. Please excuse this other branch, it will get tied up later. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come down. This is the part that goes and crosses, right? I'm going to cut it right here, and if you see, I've got new growth going upwards, and so I can retrain that growth right there towards the center of the trellis instead of crossing. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this, and that will allow me to retrain this upwards in the correct direction. All right, so see this spindly stem? Eventually I'm going to have this guy that I just cut is going to come up through the middle. But let's enjoy this for this year. Look at all this new growth coming off of here. So let's go ahead and put this guy in place in a horizontal fashion to enjoy its color. And eventually when that other stem that I just cut grows up and it's going to cross, I can trim it at that time. But if we do this one across, this is all going to be beautiful color, which I think will be really, really fun. Remember, doesn't have to be as crazy permanent as everyone leads you to believe. You just saw me taking down all the ties on my climbing rose and taking it in a different direction, and that's okay, especially because I'm learning. I'm a beginner, right? So I'm going to learn what's going to work best. My big focus is having these 4 main canes going for the plant, which I think is extremely helpful. All right, so over here I've got this guy curving, which beginner. So let's go in here and let's cut all of its ties. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to resituate it more this way. So we're getting a little bit more horizontal, and then we're also getting horizontal that way since I somehow managed to create an S curve with it. And over the years, this rose has only been here 1 year. It will continue to establish itself, show me what its stronger canes are. And then I can continue to work from there to add growth and strength to the climbing rose. Now, of course, everything I'm talking to you guys about, I'm a beginner, I'm learning. I want you to see the process that I'm going through so you can see any good things I do and, of course, see the mistakes I make, because that is definitely something that I'm going to do over time. But it'll be good for you to see this process, and then when we check back on this, in the summer, we can see how it did on growth, make changes as needed. I'm going to clip a few of these ends to increase a little bit of more branching, just a few of them. Do that back over here too. Just clean this up a little bit. Okay, looks good. And then of course the last thing I'm going to do is come in here and pull back the mulch and debris Okay, so that's good. I don't have any big mama roses yet in my garden. My garden's newer, right? So I don't have any established roses that have been there 3, 5 years, anything like that. But over time, there will be more pruning needed because it will produce more growth. Because when I'm pruning, that's what I'm telling the plant to do. I'm telling it to produce more growth. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the difference between, I was pruning some of the roses for more cut flowers. I pruned the Oh So Easy for more of a landscape. So I wanted more blooms, smaller blooms, but more color. And then pruning the America Climbing Rose to begin angling its growth towards the new shade garden trellis. And then finally pruning and rearranging the Don Juan Climbing Rose for optimal color and growth by kind of making its canes go more horizontally in order to get more growth going upwards and more blooms throughout. So for fertilizer, I just use a general rose fertilizer. I'll show y'all that in a minute. There are lots of things out there. A lot of people use rose tone. I usually just use what's available and around me. And I think what I currently have, I think is like Fertilome from Walmart maybe. And the main things that your rose needs is it needs a fertilizer that has nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So the nitrogen is for, and that'll be an N, is for foliage growth. That's what increases the beautiful green foliage. The phosphorus is for root growth. So that's increasing root structure and root growth underneath the soil. And then the potassium is for flower formation. So typically when you're looking at any kind of like flower fertilizer, it's going to have a lot of the potassium because that's the one that increases the flower formation. I tend for rose fertilizer, since I'm new to rose fertilizer, I buy an actual rose fertilizer that is designed for fertilizing roses. I am not far enough along in my gardening journey to be able to mix a combination of fertilizers to make my own rose fertilizer. So I just go ahead and buy it. It makes my life super easy. You do want to begin fertilization prior to all of this green growth starting, which is rough because a lot of mine already started. A lot of them never went dormant. So it is what it is. I'm just going to go ahead and do that fertilizing now. You also want to fertilize once you're past the time when you would have any like severe spring frosts or freezes. And most likely we will get some light freezes still, but I think we are past the point of like anything super severe. Of course I say that, and now y'all know what's going to happen. We're going to have some crazy polar vortex come down. It's going to get to like 10 degrees. Okay, so a lot of people ask, well, how often do I fertilize? Well, I'm going to be doing a granule fertilizer, and that's the fertilizer I'm going to do at the very beginning for all of my roses at the very beginning of the season. Typically, I won't fertilize again with the granule fertilizer only because I'll forget. I'll totally forget to do it. That literally is the reason why. You do want to fertilize after each bloom cycle, right? So my roses are all going to put on blooms, and they're going to give me blooms probably late spring, early summer. Once a lot of those blooms fade, then I can go back in and I would hit it with additional granulized fertilizer at that point in time. But if you're like me, I'm probably not going to remember that anyway. Anyway, you want to fertilize after each bloom cycle, but you want to fertilize by about half as much. So the first time you go full strength, second time you go half, next time you go a fourth of the strength. And the reason being is because the closer that we get to fall and winter, the less fertilizer we want to put in the plant. Because you don't want your plant fertilizing, you don't want your plant creating all this beautiful, tender, new green growth right before the winter, because that growth will most likely freeze, rot, and bring disease to your roses. So you definitely want to stop all fertilization of your roses about 6 to 8 weeks prior to your first freeze in your area, and that'll just help protect it if it puts on any like crazy new growth or anything like that. We don't want it growing like crazy right before the winter. Now, I will also hit my roses with a liquid fertilizer, typically my Alaskan fish emulsion, or I do use the Proven Winners liquid or water soluble fertilizer as well. I'll put up a picture of it. I use that as well. I will maybe hit that once a month if I remember. I'm not very good at remembering to do the liquid fertilizers outside. It's just one of those things I forget. And then by the time I remember, I'm like, it's kind of too late at this point. But I know some of you guys are really religious about that and do a great job remembering. I hope to do better each year. And I do think I do better each year. I would love to at least liquid fertilize my garden at least once a month. I think one of my biggest issues is I try to leave it to one day and fertilize all in one day. And I don't think that's a real thing. For me, because I don't typically have that much time. So I think one of the good things to do with liquid fertilizer is to break up sections of the garden and be like, okay, this week I'm going to do all the raised beds. And then this next week I'm going to do the side garden. And then this next week I'm going to do, and just keep it like in a constant rotation. That would probably work better for me. I'll think about it. Okay, so we talked about fertilizer. So let's go ahead and fertilize the plants and let me show you what I do for mine. Okay, I'm just using a Fertilizing rose food right here. And basically I'm just going to come in with a handful and sprinkle it at the base of the plant and kind of just lightly work it into the soil. Super simple and easy like that. And that's how I go about watering. I don't typically pay all that much attention to how much to put. I just kind of start with like a handful in the smaller roses. And as we get bigger, I'll do a couple more handfuls. So let's knock out some other ones. This one right here is Belinda's, which I really feel like it needs less. I didn't really like having the mulch in the container roses. So I'm just going to come in and kind of just scratch this into the surface. Super simple and easy. And you can water these in well afterwards. This is the Don Juan rose. I do have some landscaping fabric in this area because this is an area that had amaranthus everywhere. So I'm going to put a couple of handfuls for the Don Juan rose. Just like I said before, just going to scratch it in. And this all just kind of releases via osmosis into the soil. Let's put a couple of handfuls. Scratch it into the soil. And then the Oh So Easy, which I really need my gloves for this one, but that means I would have to walk all the way around. All right, I'm really into my gloves. These will be my Amazon storefront if you're interested. Really into them. It's kind of like leather at the top. I think they're all leather, but yeah, and they fit. I have big hands, so I have man hands. So these really fit the size of my hands really well. And I don't recall if they come in sizes, but if you have small hands and these don't come in sizes, this is not for you. These are definitely for people with bigger hands. Okay, so I guess I can take my gloves off. No. Okay, so I also have a lot of these new plants. These are going to get potted up in some other containers later on. For now, they're going to stay in these containers and continue growing until I make decisions on what containers I want them to actually go in. But I feel good. I feel like I gave all of my roses the best start I can. Now, all of these roses have water, drip lines to them, and I am starting to increase my drip. More water at this time. I had it down during the winter to every 5 days if there was no rain. And now I've reduced it. Now we're every 3 days if there's no rain. And we're not seeing a lot of rain in our forecast coming up. Like it's looking like a dry spring. So if we don't get any more rain in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'll probably increase to every 2 days. And we're increasing the water because the water, you know, spring when it starts to rain, when the spring rains come through, that's when it's telling all the plants to wake up. So I want to tell my plants to start waking up as well. So right now all my drip lines are set to every 3 days for those of you who follow my drip line schedule. I still got scratches. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, watching a beginner rose gardener go through the process of pruning and fertilizing. I have no doubt that I did not get it all right. I have no doubt. So for those of you who have information about pruning and fertilizing roses, let me know. I got a lot of feedback when I was planting my bare roses about planting the graft below the soil level. So I did a lot of research on that. So that is typically something that you want to do in the colder climates. You want to plant the grafted portion of the rose under the soil. It's not a necessary thing in the warmer climates. And that's just because in the colder climates, when it gets super cold, the grafted portion can die off. And it's not as big of a deal in the south. So I'm not super worried about mine, but in the future on all my bare root roses, I will start burying them a little bit deeper. But I appreciate that feedback, pointing those out. I went and did the research and I feel okay with what I have now, but I will definitely heed your advice in the future. All right, we're good. So now I'm actually on my way. My son's going to the symphony tomorrow. He needs some dress up clothes. He wanted a tux. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna buy him a tux, but I gotta go do that. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Drop your information and feedback below regarding your roses. And if you have questions, and let me or the other awesome gardeners in this group answer them for you. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Every time you like and comment, it helps grow my channel even more. And I'm just so incredibly appreciative of all of you all. And make sure to check me out on my social media outlets, including Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, she's a mad gardener or a decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.